Well, it's great to talk to you again, Corey. I love the Righteous Gemstones so
Yeah.
much, and congratulations on the new season. It's so funny. And I was thinking about how soon were you brought in for season four? I know sometimes it's kind of like I think last time I talked to you, it was like, okay, you're brought in for this. You've got only a few days to do like to come up with certain stunts. So yeah, what was it like coming in for season four?
Well, good to see you too. No, season four was I definitely came in a little bit earlier. Season three, I was just kind of I was on a few things back to back. So I ended up coming in with like a couple of days of prep after having a friend help me prep, in my absence. But I got out to Charleston for season four about a month before we started shooting. So there was a good amount of time to really look at these scripts and start breaking things down and physically being able to be on all those first location scouts with production where we get to discuss what's going to happen in the episodes, but also really be physically in the space for the first time with our producers, with our directors, and start working those sequences out.
Was there anything immediately that you're like, oh man, I'm so excited? Like, I mean, that first episode is so exciting, but was there anything that you're like, wow, this is great?
Yeah, I think honestly, I think the Civil War episode was one of the things that stood out to me immediately, and not because it was an immediate uh, sequence we needed to address, but more
Yeah.
because of everything that was involved. It's not every day you get to do period action like that. Um, Although it does seem like maybe westerns and those period pieces are on the rise again, but that was something that I had never been able to be a part of in on that scale. And so it
Yeah.
was something that I was really excited to kind of dig in and start working out for Danny, who directed that episode.
That's such a fantastic episode. It's so ambitious too. I love that like it came back for season four with this like, taking us to the past, which was so cool. And yeah, I what kind of stunt work did you do for this one? Because I always, even when I was watching it, I think there's this like amazing scene that's just like the camera's just following all of this stunt where all of these people. And I was thinking this has got to be a lot of work went into this. So yeah, what did you do first for working on that episode?
Yeah, so the very first thing we did was start working out that Wonder sequence, and it
Yeah.
was it was like a 200. I want to say it was 220 feet of dolly track. So it was like a 220 foot um, um, tracking shot through the Civil War. Danny wanted it to be focused on the Confederate Army and not necessarily see the opposite side of the war because that's, the Confederates were who Bradley Cooper's character
Yeah.
was the chaplain for. And inside of that scene, I mean, we had stuntmen doing saddle falls, taking regular bullet reactions. We had mortars going off, real black powder cannons, black powder muskets, and then at the end of the sequence, we had a really awesome ratchet that flies our stunt performer about, 30 feet through the air and about 20 feet up in the air and drops him down to the ground. So there's a lot of moving parts, not to mention our individual cannon team, our background actors, our reenactors, right? Who
Yeah.
are skilled and trained Civil War background when it comes to film and television. They have experience in live Civil War reenactments, and so yeah, there's a lot of stuff to work out, a lot of different kinds of stunts within the sequence, and it really started with toy soldiers. I bought a ton of little
Really?
Confederate Army men, and I designed the battlefield on my kitchen island. So you do what you got to do,
Yeah.
whatever it takes. And I modeled our little Civil War battlefield based on Danny's notes. And I took sticky notes and I started writing down where mortar blasts were happening and sticking them on the counter and which cannons we wanted firing, and I took a bunch of photos and referenced that and sketched on my iPad where the dolly tracks would be and the directional movement of each of our, you know, background battalions and all of our stuntmen, and that was the beginning of the pitch of am I getting close to your vision, right? Before we really
Wow.
get in there and start doing anything else, is this what you're looking for?
And was that what they were looking for? Then were they like happy? I mean, clearly, like it sounds like
Yeah.
you knew what you're doing.
Yeah, well,
Yeah,
yeah, I have some experience,
yeah.
No, it was, and you know what? What was great about kind of doing that map with the army men, excuse me, and then presenting it to Danny, with the iPad and the sketch overlays, was he was able to make those adjustments. So he said, yeah, all the action sounds great, but this is the angle I was thinking with the dolly track. And one note that he gave me
Wow.
that was great was he wanted the dolly not to be flat on the action, but he wanted it to be slightly angled in toward the action. So from start to finish, you actually get closer, right?
It felt
So
that way too. Yeah.
yeah, so we're moving from like being a casual observer to being more in the action by the end of the sequence. And so that was something I was like, all right, great. And all I have to do now that I'm at home is erase my, dolly tracks on the iPad, redraw it, make a couple of notes, present it. And we went from there. So it started with those Army Men sketches. And then I did a video previs with the Army Men, and I used my iPhone as the dolly, and the camera.
I love
And
that.
then, yeah, and laid in some sound effects. And once that was approved, and then our stunt performers that were going to be a part of that sequence showed up, we had about a week ish to work out the sequence, along with that ambush sequence that we did as well, kind of toward the end of the
Yeah.
episode. So we split our 4 or 5 days between working out the individual stunts, getting everybody together to rehearse their movements in that wonder sequence, and then repping out the ambush sequence that Bradley was a part of with us.
What was it like working with Bradley? I mean, that was such a surprise for us. I mean, I guess you're kind of holding in that surprise for
Oh
audiences.
yeah,
What was
for
it like
months.
working with him? Yeah.
No, he was awesome. He really
Yeah.
he really was great. He was the consummate professional, and it was really inspiring actually to watch him work and see how dedicated he is to his craft. Like
Yeah.
it got me pumped up in my department just seeing how kind he was to everybody on set, but how seriously he took his role in our little comedy. You know what I mean?
Yeah. You could see that too. It was like, oh yeah, he's here to like, he's really taking this seriously. It was like exciting to see that, you know?
It was awesome, and him and
Yeah.
Danny collaborating, and he never really sat at Video Village in his chair. He was always near set, where things were happening, where things were getting set up, even in between shots, and just watching how he observed everything happening and him taking it all in and processing it. It's something that I did a lot of early in my career, and it was a reminder, like, hey, it doesn't matter how far along you get, there's always something to learn. You know.
Yeah, totally. I'm thinking too last year, like when I talked to you about like the monster trucks, like what a difference like a season makes that you're going back to the Civil War. But then you're also doing those jetpacks, which as soon as I saw that episode, I'm like, oh, Corey's got a lot cut out for him. This like I was thinking of the stunts. I'm like, so
Thank you.
yeah, tell me about that because I was even like I mean, is it real? Is it CG? I mean, it's real, but it's just like it's
Yeah.
impressive. Yeah.
No, thank you. It was a lot, that sequence, and we could have used more time, to be completely honest with you. But we did get 3 weeks of rigging, testing, and rehearsing
Wow.
for that sequence. I joke and say, like, I don't know how I talked our UPM into giving me that amount of time for the sequence, but the truth of the matter is, it's because it necessitated it. Um, and our team is so good at giving you what you need to be successful and making sure everything we're trying to do meets the vision that was on the page, right? And
Yeah.
so it's not like pulling teeth trying to make it happen, as long as we're able to explain to the production staff what is needed and why it's needed and how it's going to help us reach our goals. They're very supportive. Um, so it did. We got 3 weeks of rigging, testing, and rehearsing. It started immediately after the last day of stunts on the Civil War.
Wow.
So as soon as we did, I think stunts wrapped on the Gatling gun sequence, and there was a few more things to do. And I was able to take the rigging team that also was involved in the Civil War and send them to start their prep in the Coliseum. And I think it was over 7,000 lines of tech line, which is what we use to fly performers.
Oh
So
my
so
gosh.
over a mile and a quarter, kind of pushing toward a mile and a half of line, 13 rigs, two high speed winches. I think our core team was 5 people, 5 stunt riggers, plus 3 stunt doubles, and then when we got to shooting the sequence, we were able to get four more stunt riggers. So it was, it was very intense, very involved. We
Yeah.
were able to get Danny and Edie and Adam for a couple hours of rehearsal ahead of time just to make sure they were all comfortable in wires.
Yeah, I was wondering about that. Were they scared? Like, were any of them like, I mean, especially, well, I take it that Danny probably had a stunt person when he's being like basically levitating.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
was a wild sequence.
Yeah, listen, there's always a little bit of level of nerves for the performers when you're getting on wires, especially if it's something you haven't done a lot of or you don't know.
Yeah.
Danny and Adam had a little bit of experience. Edie had never been on wires before. And so we got them in, I believe, the Friday before we were going to start the following week shooting the sequence. And so I was able to get them in wires and let them fly around the Coliseum and do some fun stuff. And then we did that following Monday. I believe it was a holiday weekend, but that following Monday, we ended up doing a full rehearsal. So costume rehearsal, rig rehearsal with stunts, with our actors.
Wow.
And so they were able to fly again on that rehearsal day, which was it was super helpful. And look, they all have stunt doubles that were amazing, but what we tried to do in this sequence was keep our actors in the rigs as much as possible. So that way we're really selling the gags. We're not
Yeah.
cutting away too often trying to hide them with our stunt performers. And we saved our stunt performers for some of the other heavy lifting. So when they were taking the big hits or flying extra high,
Yeah.
um, and or after 4 days of flying, when our actors were starting to get a little uncomfortable in the harnesses, because it's not the most comfortable thing.
Yeah.
Um, then we put them in to kind of help alleviate some of that discomfort. But Mike Endoso is Danny's stunt double. He was actually nominated for an Emmy last year in one of our
Yes.
sequences, and he was incredible. They're taking care of Danny, making sure he was always comfortable. And Danny did do one of our flights all the way up to the disco ball.
Really? Oh
He
my God.
did. He did because we had the overhead shot over the disco ball looking down at them. So we did do one with Danny flying toward the disco ball all the way up so we
Wow.
could get his face in the shot. And then when we jump back to the wides, we used Mike.
That's amazing. That's so
Yeah,
cool.
yeah. They were very involved in that sequence. Our actors were very involved.
Wow. Well, I mean, it always feels like it's them. It doesn't like I almost forget that you have stuff, which is the whole idea. So
Yeah. Yeah, that's it, right? We're
yeah.
supposed to, help we're kind of like the unspoken heroes behind the scenes.
Yeah.
Our job is to make our actors look the best possible, whether they're getting wrecked or they're playing the superhero. Our job is to make them look good. And if that means us doing more of it or them doing more of it, we're happy either way.
Yeah. So I have to ask about like, okay, BJ has an injury this season and it's a terrible fall. Were you involved with that with stunt coordination?
Yeah, absolutely. I
Yeah.
was, I was there from, prep all the way through wrap. So that sequence, and what's funny is you read the scene and it's, he's now taking these pole dancing classes. He's going to do a pole competition. And so
Yeah.
immediately I started reaching out trying to find who locally we could get to train with Tim, right? Because
Yeah.
again, you want him to be able to do as much as possible, and then
Yeah.
trying to find local or regional experts at pole dancing. And one of the ladies who production had reached out to in their research was a gal by the name of Tanya. She has a pole sports and fitness center there in Charleston.
Oh my
And
God.
I came across her in my research as well. We connected. She's very amazing, very good at what she does. She runs one of the national organizations for competition, and they're actually making a push for Olympic level competition in the pole sports,
That's so
and
cool.
it's amazing. And it's a whole world that I was not familiar with, but I know of through parkour and aerial
Yeah.
and acrobatics. But it's this kind of subculture that I wasn't really involved in until now. And she took over as far as the training went, and then her and her team helped with the choreography, and they designed the routine that BJ does, right? She
Yeah.
actually plays the pole teacher in his class scene, which
Oh
is
my
which is
God.
awesome.
Oh, doesn't
Yes.
Edie like make a comment to her too or
Yes.
something? Yeah.
It's so good. And so Tanya was there with us every step of the way, and help handle a lot of the pool stuff. Tim did most of was able to do most of the routine. Jesse, who's a world champion pole sports athlete that trains with Tanya, he was his pole double for the
Oh
dance
my
sequences.
gosh.
Yeah, and for some of the difficult moves that we were doing without wires, Jesse stepped in and did that, and he was a pleasure to work with. And then we rigged Tim for a couple of the harder moves so that
Yeah.
way he could nail
Thinking
it
about
every
taking a
single
class
time.
before, and I was thinking that's so hard when he was just holding himself up. I'm like, that's so hard.
Totally. So we
Yeah.
gave Tim a little bit of love in a few areas. Just so, and look, and it's not even that Tim can't do it. It's that when you have to do it 15, 20 times on
Yeah.
camera to get all of the coverage and all the different angles, after the first couple, it starts to become more difficult. So we're there to help give that assistance. And then we use T. Ryan Mooney, who has been Tim's double since the beginning of the Righteous Gemstones, doing all of his roller skating and all of the wacky stuff he gets himself into. And Mooney was the one that did that fall to his neck and his shoulder.
Oh,
Yeah. And so that was something that was, we gave him a little bit of love and put him on a line for that, but he still had to auger into the ground. So we try to scrub a little bit of that impact at the end. But Ryan's so talented and always goes the extra mile when he's doubling Tim.
oh yeah. Actually I love all of Tim's stuff that he does and all of his stunts because I was thinking of last year too with the naked fight scene. That's like one of my favorite scenes
I
ever
know. Me,
on a
me
TV
too,
show.
honestly. I know.
Yeah. This has been so fun. So is there anything I've only seen like a few episodes this season. I like to savor them. Is there anything to look out for in future episodes? Any stunts that you wanna
Oh
look for?
man.
Any episodes? Yeah.
I believe it's episode 8. We have a really crazy sequence coming up in episode 8 that involves animals and swamps and fights between some of our guest stars and our principal cast. And there's some really interesting, crazy things there. We had to rig some gags in a swamp, and it was a real swamp. So that's probably all I can say for now. And that was very interesting and technically challenging from a safety perspective. And then one of my favorite things that we did, I believe it was 2 weeks ago at the Lake House episode, was the water skiing with Baby Billy. And that was outrageous and was a true mix of Walton water skiing, in a bathing suit, and
Okay, I was
then
gonna say, yeah.
a stunt double doing the rest of the water skiing naked. And I'll tell you, I found out from our water skiing double that when you try to do barefoot water skiing without a bathing suit on, it creates a rooster tail of water shooting up into an area that's not so comfortable. Um, yeah, and I didn't think about that, and I didn't
Yeah,
think about how it feels very different wiping out on the water when
yeah.
you don't have a bathing suit on. So that was a very fun, and it wasn't necessarily a challenging scene, but it was very fun. And Walton is an expert level water skier on his own, so we had to bring
Really?
somebody in that could match his level of skill. Absolutely, yeah,
Oh
he
my
was great.
gosh.
He was
That's
so good.
crazy. You've got the coolest job like on television. Think of all the things you have to do.
I know. I
I,
got to rip around water skis with our cast, like and actually at one point I had to go grab Danny from the house and bring him out to the boat. And so we had a jet ski set up for him. And he jumped on a jet ski and I jumped on a jet ski. And we were just hauling ass across the lake trying to get to our camera boat. And I remember thinking for a minute, I'm like, I'm just like ripping across the lake with Danny on jet skis right now. This is like me and Kenny Powers, just
I
going
was
to
just
work.
thinking, I just started rewatching Eastbound and Down from the beginning, and I'm like, that's so Kenny Powers.
Totally. It was, it's a
Yeah.
blast. And yeah, all of our actors were great on the water. They all, if you, when you see that episode, it came out a couple of weeks ago,
Yeah.
that all of our cast got on the water and we had, Keith was kneeboarding. We had Amber water skiing. She's also insane on skis. She grew up skiing. So she had a blast ripping around the lake. Our all of the actors that played Danny's kids got involved. One of our young guys, Gavin, it wasn't Gavin, but one of our young men was doing backflips off of the boat. So we really had fun at the lake, and they were all very involved, doing a lot of their own action on the lake.
That's amazing. Wow, that is so cool.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Yeah. Thank you so much for this conversation. This was so
You're
fun. I
welcome.
loved the show. I've enjoyed all of the stunts, all of the comedy this season. Can't wait for episode 8.
Awesome. Yeah, yeah. Look out for it, please.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
You're welcome. You too.